Short films don't make money.
You made 2 short films before you turned 19.
And I love doing horror, thriller, sci-fi. I think on the first day when we were shooting the film, he never moved from that chair. He kept looking at himself in the mirror because he was like, I just want to stay in character. I don't want to go and mingle with other people. So I was like, well, this guy's like taking the role super serious. You need to know how much money you have to work with. So write something within the means of shooting it. And that way you'll have good short films all the time.
Yo, beautiful humans, and welcome back to Creative Ones on Anchor Podcast. I remain your host, Chineme Prince. Today, I have one of UAE's finest filmmakers. He's been in the industry for over a decade, and I'm really excited to have this chat with him because we've met, but we've not really had a chance to chat. So, ladies and gentlemen, Faisal Hashmi.
Thank you for having me, man.
Man, I'm excited to have you here, man. This has been a long time coming, and I'm really glad that you accepted to show up. So I'm just going to jump straight into the interview. You made 2 short films before you turned 19. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah.
At 19, I think I was just into university and all that, trying to figure out what to do. But you already made 2 short films. What was the drive for you at that time?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was young, when I was graduating high school, I never knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker particularly, only because there was no successful use case. I mean, example of like somebody who had made it as a filmmaker here. So, sometimes they say like your dreams are kind of limited by what you see, like inspiration around you. So I'd never seen a successful filmmaker from the UAE. So after school, I just joined a business degree. So I was doing a business degree before I was 19. But I was always a fan of telling stories. So I used to write short stories. I used to write novels. But around that 18, 19 years of age, I began to realize that a lot of the things that I'm writing feel cinematic in nature. I was getting more introduced to films. And I was like, I want to explore this art form. So I started sort of writing screenplays. And at first I thought, okay, maybe I'm just going to write some screenplays and somebody will direct it, right? And then I realized in Dubai, it's such a small market. You don't have that kind of marketplace over here yet. So that was very frustrating that I'm writing things that nobody was like shooting. So at 19, I was like, okay, let me write something that takes place in one location. I can cast my friends in it and I will just go shoot it. So I just went to my parents. I was like, what, do we have a camera at home? They were like, yeah, we have like a very subpar handy cam. I'm like, I'll make it work. I went to my university and it's a business degree college. I was like, hey, I'm making a short film. Do we have anything I can use? They were like, we have like a very janky tripod in the back of the warehouse. I'm like, I'll take it. So I took that. And so at 19, I made my first short film. Very scrappy. Like if you look at it now, it looks very, very scrappy. Like it's not great audio, but it had a good concept. It's like a time loop kind of a concept. I was very ambitious for what I had, but that's what you do. When you don't know anything better, you're just gonna go for like a Hollywood level concept and do it for like peanuts. So I did that, and that's when I realized I love the idea of shooting what I'm writing as well. Like I love directing. I love talking to actors. I love like kind of shooting things interestingly. And that's when I started falling in love with directing and realizing like I love doing that. And so 2 months later, I did it again. And each time, like we were talking about this earlier, like I thought it's a 1-minute short film. So I was like, oh, it's going to take me like 3 hours to shoot. We were there for 16 hours on set. That's when I'm like, okay, things can take way longer than they need to, The runtime has nothing to do with it, It's just like, how long it takes. So, but yeah, just doing those 2 short films at 19, I didn't know anybody. There was no crew. It was just me doing lights, camera, everything like that. And just a friend of mine who just trusted me blindly. He's like, oh, you want to do a short film? Cool, I'm going to be in it. So I was like, can I use the apartment? I'm like, great. I needed a female actress and I knew his cousin. I'm like, hey, do you want to be in my... I don't have the confidence to go ask people to be like strangers to be in my film because I'm like, they'll be like, who are you? Like, what have you done? So I was just like, okay, let me just approach people that I know. So in case even if I fail, I'm feeling sort of internally.
Yes.
So, but those things came out nice. And I was like, okay, let me pursue this, But it took a long time from that to kind of pursue this as a full-time thing. Yeah. But I was like, at least I think I'm okay at this. I'm not too bad. So let me just keep trying and keep making stuff. And it was too late for me to join film school at this point. I was halfway through my business degree. So I was like, I don't want to waste 2-3 years of my life by restarting. And this is when DSLRs were becoming popular. The 5D Mark II and stuff had come out. So I was like, let me just keep shooting stuff. Let me make this my film school. Like each film that I made, those 2 films, I'm like, what was the mistakes that I did here? If you watch that first short film, there's a tripod in the back of the shot. I was like, wow, I didn't even look at that. I'm like, okay, so like pay more attention to everything. I know because you're the only one doing so many things, so it just becomes very tricky. But yeah, so I was like, let me just keep making short films, learn from the lessons, and hopefully that becomes my film school. And that's been like the ethos, ever since.
So you continue learning and
yeah. Because I was like, film school is great. I mean, anybody who can go to film school, I always recommend them to go to film school if you have the resources to do so. But now more than ever, like you can learn a lot of information just online. I learned about screenwriting online. I learned about like filming online. There's so many video essays on YouTube about like filmmaking. So, and just like there's no better experience. Like you could go to 6 months of film school, but one day on set is going to trump all of that. You know, when you see in the weeds of, even if it's not your set, even if you just go and visit an actual film and just be involved in it, you will realize like how much work goes into it, and it just like recalibrates your brain into like, okay, the logistic side of thing, you know, because we all are such like idealistic people, like, oh, I have this amazing idea, but when you're like, okay, I need to get a master shot, a wide shot, close up, insert, then you understand, okay, filmmaking, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into filmmaking as well. So yeah, it was a great, like, kind of very practical, you know, on the job lesson to learn.
I suppose you learn better there, learning on hand experience as a filmmaker by being on set. You're a UAE kid, right? You
absolutely born and raised. Yeah.
So you've basically seen the industry grow from whatever it was to what it is now. Do you think the industry has actually grown since you were a kid starting the filmmaking business?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, definitely. It has grown in some ways. It also shrunk in some ways. So when I started off, again, this was 2009 when I made my first short films. That December is when City of Life, probably the first big movie to come out of UAE.
By Ali
Mustafa. And I watched that at Dubai Film Festival. So that's when I realized that there's a film festival happening in Dubai, because I was kind of now learning about filmmaking. Yeah. I went there and I watched the first kind of big film to come out of this region. And that was very inspirational, because I was like, wow, this is a Hollywood scale film made in this region, you know, and I could recognize Dubai and stuff in it. So it was very inspirational. I'm like, okay, there's a long way for me to go to get here, but like there is at least now a successful model of that. It can be done. So that was great. And we had a lot of successful films then. We did regress in a few ways because some of our film festivals shut down, including Dubai Film Festival.
Yes.
So then that, I think, puts a lot of, it just demotivates a lot of people, because you can make films, but then if you don't have a local platform to sort of showcase them. So it's been an up and down. I still don't think we have a film industry. We have a film movement. Okay. So every couple of years we'll have some really interesting films. But I don't think we have a consistent, like, you know, like India or South Korea, like those countries, like consistently are making films. There's a market for it. I don't think we have that yet. I don't think we know what a UAE film is yet, but I think it's already on a. It's already.
Do you think we have the potential to get there?
Oh, 100%. I think there's so many talented filmmakers that I've met here, and what's unique about the UAE is that the melting pot of cultures, right? Like I'm talking to you, like we are, you know, I've had Arab people in my films, I've got Indian people in my films, you know, European people in the film. So it's just, you can combine and you can tell stories in such an interesting way that I don't think you can tell that in any other part of the world. You know, you can use mythology from this part of the world, combined with characters living, you know, from another part of the world entirely. So that could be the USP of what UAE film is. It's like it's a melting pot in a very unique way. I think it just needs an industry to sort of support it. I think there's a lot of infrastructure that's required to sort of support it. We need film festivals for sure. So a lot of things are needed. I think once you push and cultivate that talent, I think we're gonna have a great time with. Well,
I do hope we get there at some point. Yeah. I'm going to take it back to City of Life. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
I saw that you were contracted to write the screenplay for the sequel of that.
Yes.
Yes. Can you actually talk on that, or is it like a NDA kind of situation going on?
I can talk a little bit on that. I mean, so that was an insane full circle situation. So because I met Ali years later after I watched that movie, and I told him like, hey, the impact that film had on me, because it was like the one thing that made me feel like, okay, I can take this as a career, because I see somebody else doing it as a career. And then years later, he reached out to me when he had an idea for City of Life 2. He wanted to make that. There is a little bit more of a thriller bent to it, which is why I think he approached me, because I'm sort of more in that genre direction. I love doing horror, thriller, sci-fi. And so he came to me with sort of an idea of 3 characters. And he was like, these are the 3 characters. This is kind of the journey that I'm imagining that I want to do with them. What would you do with it? So I just went back and I created sort of a treatment of like what my pitch for it would be. And he loved it. And so we've been working together on that ever since. And it's a movie it's a standalone film. So it's 3 new characters, including a Nigerian character. Is one of the leads of the film. Yeah, a Nigerian bouncer is one of the leads of the film, working in Dubai on a club security. And you know, so there's a couple of new characters, and it's the same structure of the first film, where you're following 3 storylines and they kind of intersect in the finale in an interesting way. So that's the unique part, is you don't have to have seen the first film, but if you have, there are some Easter eggs that will come into the film as well. But for me, it was just an honor to be a part of a film that was so inspirational to me. It was a new experience writing for somebody else, because everything that I've ever written is for me to direct. So it's an interesting experience, like working with somebody, and of course City of Life is Ali's franchise. It's his baby. So it's like, how much can I add to it, and, you know, bring my sort of genre elements into it. Yeah. So, but it's been an incredible experience, and I think we are now actively actively in pre-production. So
Okay.
hopefully next year you'll hear a lot more about these things. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear about it. But
Yeah.
I've seen some of your movies. Before we actually go into like your movies itself, like the theme that is concurrent in all of them is it's horror, it's thriller. What is your fascination with the horror and thriller genre? Also, in the past couple of years, I wouldn't say I'm a horror buff like you are, but I feel like in the past couple of years, horror is not as good as it used to be when I was a kid, or maybe it's because I've outgrown it as an adult. It's no longer as scary. But what's your fascination to it, and what do you think of the quality of horror movies that we have now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my fascination, I think I would have to credit my mom for it in a weird way, because I think when she was pregnant with me, she's a horror movie buff, by the way. We still watch horror movies regularly. And so I think she just used to watch a lot of horror movies. So ever since I was growing up, I could remember, like, even from like my crib, I could remember watching some kind of horror movie from the middle. So I think I was always fascinated with horror, slashers, and, you know, I think the fascination for me is that you can tell really interesting, entertaining stories. And it is like a magic trick, you know? So a horror film is like, it's kind of a weird control freak thing where like I can decide when I want the audience to feel at ease and then completely mess with them and throw a twist on them. So there is no other genre that gives you that kind of magic trick control of like, oh, okay, there's no one behind the curtain. Oh no, there's someone like right behind you now, you know? So the pacing of that, so I love doing that. It's also a genre that is very universal. You know, something scary in Japan is still scary here. You know, scary is scary around the world. Versus like something with comedy, a Brazilian comedy might not be funny here because there's cultural differences. There is like humor. So I love that. So I think that is why when I've made my horror short films and stuff and I put them in YouTube, you know, I have people, if you look at my comment section, it's not all English. Like I've got Latin comments in there. I've got, I've got Indian comments in there. People have dubbed it in Russian languages, which is very weird. But like, so I love that. And I just love that you can either tell something that's very visceral and just like on the surface, but also you can tell some really like something like Get Out, right? Like that's a horror film, but it has a theme of, you know, racism and all of that stuff on top of it, but without it being a lecture. That's what I love about horror films, is that you can have social commentary, but it's still an entertaining film. You know, it's not a film like a drama about racism would not have the same audience. You know, the audience has a weird resistance going into a film like, oh, this film is going to be, you know, just a lecture. But when you do it through horror, when you do it through, any kind of genre film, I think the audience is not seeing it coming. So it hits, I think, them in an interesting manner. So so that's what I love about the genre. I think you can play really interesting things within it. It's also very visual. You can be experimental in the way you shoot horror films. And to your question of like, what is the state of horror films now? You know, it's the problem with horror films is because they're so cheap to make, there will always be more bad horror films than good horror films, you know, because everybody thinks that it's like, oh, I can just shoot a scary movie in my house, you know? So so I always tell people, it's like, it's easy to make a horror film. It's much harder to make a good horror film. Because also audiences are very jaded, you know? So I think that's the issue. Like when we were younger, we didn't have exposure to a lot of horror stuff. So like everything was scary. Now when we have gone older, life has sort of brought you down also. There's so many scary real life things happening to you. So I think we've just become jaded in terms of like what scares us. But for me, I'm the same way. Like a very few things actually scare me. But that's what makes it rare. Like when I watch a movie that actually is very spooky now, like I'm like, whoa, this is like a special movie. Like recently I watched a movie called Hereditary. I don't know if you watched like a couple of years ago. That was like a movie where I was like, this is filling me with dread. Like I'm like, this is like in a way where, because you know, now that I've made horror films, I know how effects work and like I can kind of predict. I'm like, oh, I can see the music cue is going down. This is gonna be a surprise in like 2 seconds. That movie was like kept me on my toes the whole time, you know, because it was like a very different film. So yeah, there are still some really great gems, but I think it's just the audience that has become more jaded towards it.
Yeah, I suppose that's the truth, because even now I see a horror movie being shown somewhere, I'm like, maybe I don't want to. But as a kid, it was exciting.
Exactly.
I think one of my favorite horror movies was Jeepers Creepers. I don't know if you've seen.
Oh
Jeepers
of course.
Jeepers Creepers, especially the first one.
The first one,
It scared the bejesus out of me.
Exactly.
But I want to talk about your movies. You've made about 13 to 15 short films in the past.
Yeah, I mean, so like those two that I was talking about that I made in 2009, I don't officially count them as short films. But if you count them in, then I would be closer to the 50 number. But for me, my official count like is the ones that I made after that, like something that was professional. I've made 10 like proper short films. Those first two are so scrappy. I was like, wow, I don't want to count them.
So let's go with 10.
10,
I've seen Wicked, I've seen Skipped, but the one I want to talk about is Amber.
Right.
Because I saw that before, but then I saw it again recently, and it's such a good movie.
Thanks, man.
At what point in that movie, while writing that film, did you decide that you didn't want any dialogues in it? Because it worked perfectly. For me, short films are always a platform to experiment, you know? So for me, I've always tried to, if you've seen
the short film I did before Weekend was called Skipped. That also had no
Yeah,
dialogue.
I've seen
I'm,
Skipped,
I'm, I'm
I've seen,
huge.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of like trying to visually tell a story. So with Amber, I was like, okay, this is a like I took that as a challenge upon myself. It actually would be very easy to put dialogue in it. So much exposition is there in the film. I could just have like a news report or something like that. But I was like, no, what's more interesting is, can I challenge myself to tell it visually? So I would say halfway through the idea, for me, a lot of the ideas come from a location. So for me, a barber shop felt like a really interesting place because everything is a weapon within a barber shop. You know, it just depends on the context of the film. An innocent shave can become completely different if you know the context of what is at stake. So I was like, okay, let me try to make something within that, and yeah. So I was halfway through. I was like, let me see if I can do this visually because it will then translate around the world.
Yeah.
And it has played in Mexico. It has played in like Panama. It has played in Austria.
You had a whole tour.
Yeah, it has played all these places, and everybody finds their own meanings within it because because again, it's not bound by dialogue. So so I think if you're a short filmmaker, try to make one silent short film. I think it will teach you so much about visual filmmaking because dialogue is great. I mean, like Tarantino movies and stuff, they're amazing with dialogue. Dialogues add a lot to films, but like if you can tell something visually, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you can tell something visually, I think it's a good exercise to like go back to like the Charlie Chaplin, that silent era time of like when they were forced to just tell films through images. If you can do that, that would be a great way to do it. So yeah, I always try to challenge myself. I won't do that the next movie, so I always try to keep mixing it up, because it's always challenging as well. And that film was very challenging because a barber shop is full of mirrors.
Yes.
And anybody who has short films would know, like I can see crew members in one corner. And I'm like, okay, we have to shoot from this like this angle where you can't see everything because mirrors reflect among each other, and it's like, okay, I can see a car standing outside. So it was a lot of challenge, but I think that's the fun, with short films. It's like when it's done at the end, you're like, okay, I made it work despite those challenges.
That's actually very interesting because now that you talked about it, I just realized, yes, there are a lot of mirrors. Must have been really challenging to shoot that.
Absolutely.
But like working with fantastic actors like Rick Abbey and Joachim, which fantastic, brilliant actors. What was that experience like? Those fight scenes, how long did you have to choreograph that? Because those were really intense. I kept watching, I'm like, woo, but someone get hurt and stuff like that.
Well, Joachim was somebody I had in mind when I first wrote the script. I met him in 2015. I saw a short film he did, which took place in a cinema. And I was like, I just went up to him then and I was like, I have this idea. I don't know when I'm going to shoot it, but I want you to play the lead role. And he was always on board since the very beginning. With Rick Abbey, I knew him very well. Again, he's a veteran. He's been doing stuff for so long. But he was growing a beard for a movie role. So I started looking at him as a part of the character. When I met him, I was like, okay, he could fit because he became more and more sinister the larger his beard grew. Yeah. So I went up to him and he's like a method actor, So the way, I think on the first day when we were shooting the film, he never moved from that chair. So he kept looking at himself in the mirror, even during when we were in off, because he was like, I just want to stay in character. I don't want to go and mingle with other people. So I was like, well, this guy's like taking the role super seriously, which is great. Like that's what you want from such a dark presence. But yeah, it was a great experience working with them and the fight scenes. So the reason why I shot this film so late that I did, even though I've written the idea in 2016, 2017, was because I knew there's a fight scene element to it, and I didn't want to make a film with a bad fight scene. Yeah. I was like, I need to be a better filmmaker to kind of be able to tackle this. B, have the resources to be able to sort of get the right people on board to make this happen. So I just consumed myself with watching fight scenes of every kind, and it's not like a martial arts fight scene, right? Like this is like a brawl, like a very dirty, pick up things and just dragging. So for me, it wasn't like, okay, shooting like a very choreographed sort of fight scene. I was like, okay, what if just two people are just like having a fight and just using anything in the place? So I had to learn how to film fight scenes. There's a whole science of like how to sell a punch. How do you sell it to a camera even though you're not punching somebody? So a lot of research on learning that, watching shows like The Punisher, Banshee. There's like a lot of these amazing movies from Thailand and Indonesia. The Raid is one of the movies as well. Like they have these kind of gritty, brawly fight scenes. So when I watched that, and then I was like, we have to rehearse. So I don't know if you know Ivor. He's a cast.
Yeah, I know Ivor.
He was a producer on the film, and I told him like, hey, I will need some kind of a studio. Do you know anybody? And he connected me to a guy named Master Hang. He has a Taekwondo studio in Dubai. So we just used it for like 2 days, and I got all the actors. And I didn't know a fight choreographer here. I tried to look for one. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write the fight. So I'm gonna like write where it's like, okay, this guy throws a punch, this guy reverses it and does something else. So I wrote it like if you read the script of Amber, the fight scene is written line by line, like punch to reversal. And then on the day we just like practiced it. And I was like, with the actors, like let's really get this done. So that was the best decision I made, because on the day of shooting, we had 2 hours to get the whole fight scene done. because we were running very late with everything. The sun was going down. It's a daytime shoot, so the sun goes down. That's the end of your shoot. So about 4 o'clock, we started shooting that fight scene, and I told my DOP, and I had like a lot of grand ideas on how to shoot it, but I told my DOP, we don't have the time. We'll shoot 3 or 4 takes. One, shoot it all on Joachim. One, shoot it all on Rick, and then one is just like swinging between them. And the only reason that worked is because the actors were completely aware of those movements. So it was just like they were really fighting for the camera, and we were shooting them. So the result ended up being a lot more gritty and in your face, very Jason Bourne style than what I imagined it. But I think it helped the film. I think the camera feels like it's in the middle of the fight. But there were so many elements. There were stunt elements. There was like blood coming out.
The makeup.
So we had to bring in these certain glasses, because of the part where somebody takes a glass and smashes it on the guy's head. In the US, you find sugar glass. So those are fake like glasses that are not sugar. You don't find them here at all. So I had to order 3 of them from the US. One of them broke in transit. Wow. So we got 2 by the time we got it there. We did the first take, and I think Rick extended his arm a little too further, so we could never see the hit on the camera. So we had 1 left. So I was like, I just told the DOP, like, shoot it wider. This is the only shot we have. Like, if we don't get this moment is not in the film. And so what you see in the film of Rick getting smacked with that is the only take we could have done. So a lot of stress in there on top, because nobody knew how to work with these things, right? Like we don't, how many action movies are shot in UAE? So we were all like figuring it out as we go. But it was the best part of the movie for me. And I'm so glad that the fight scene worked for you and it worked for most people, because I think if that feels amateur, the movie doesn't work. It just takes you out of the whole experience. So yeah, so for me, I was like, if I cannot do that right, I'd rather not make this movie.
Yeah. So I mean, still on Amber, I was going through like the credit list, and it's like a lot of people.
Yeah,
that's a lot of people. I saw action films and all that. That's a lot of people. Was it based off of collaboration? Did you have to pay people to do this, or do you have to get like sponsors? Because that's another thing. Financing movies here in the UAE is not something that you can actually do necessarily. So how did that work out? Was it like a collaboration? Oh, okay, we're gonna do this and give you guys this, and then, or did you have like a sponsor, someone to finance the movie?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So we didn't have any sponsors. It's completely privately funded between me, Ivor, Kane, sound guy Kane, and my friend Kurt. They all worked on the film. So Kane did sound, Kurt with the production, Ivor was production and casting, and we just loved this idea. And we were like, we needed a certain amount of money, and this is still not enough money because almost everybody on the film worked for free. So most of the money that went on the film was just like getting the location. The barbershop had to be rented, right? The barbershop won't give it to us for free. Yeah. They don't know who we are. They don't care about film or exposure. So we had to rent out the barbershop. We had to like house the crew for a day because it was a 2-day shoot. So we had to like house them somewhere nearby, so we don't have to drive 2 hours to get to the location every day. So, but it was completely funded by those guys who loved the idea. I think if you find passionate people, and they were like, how much do we need to make this movie on a bare minimum? Okay, we'll split it 4 ways, like so between 4 of us, and we'll just make it happen. And but yeah, the DOP Elias was free. Action film was amazing. We had a very tiny budget for lighting and stuff like that. And Crispin is awesome. He always likes to support filmmakers. So we just were like, hey, we have this really tiny budget, but we need all of these things. So because we needed like really powerful lights, because we have a light outside that is kind of mimicking the sun, because we shot through the day, the sun keeps changing, right? So we had this very powerful light that's like lighting it as if it's the sun lighting it. So, but we need its own generator truck. So, and Crispin was amazing. He was like, okay, give me just this, like with that amount, you can just take 10 people of mine, go and shoot it. So it was really awesome, and working with the crew like that. Makeup artist Zaira, she also came on completely for free. So I think if you have a really cool idea, and if you're passionate about it, because a lot of people came on board because when I was talking and I was pitching them the film, like I like that you love this so much. Like I want to work with you because like I love the passion that's coming through. So if you just feel passionate, and if of course it helps to have a backlog of films that people can see, like okay, you can deliver on what you're saying. It's not just a good idea, but also how to direct it, so you're not wasting anybody's time. But yeah, I think you just ask and see people. People are much more willing to come on short films if it's a weekend shoot or whatever for free versus like a feature film. When you're shooting a feature film, which I'm working on right now, it's much harder to tell people to come on board for like 20 days, 30 days for free. People here, most of them have full-time jobs, But yeah, it's a weekend, and if people are free, and if you're passionate, you have a cool idea, reach out to them. People are gonna, you'll be surprised how many people are willing to just come on board and do something cool.
No, I agree with that, because for the first time last year, I produced my first short film, and it's basically just like talking to people that I knew and friends, like, yo, this is what I have. And also I had to make sure that it had to be a good script, 100%. Which is really important. A good script, and then I was able to get people, and it came out really well. But just on still filmmaking itself and financing, do you think it's important as a filmmaker to also know aspects of financing?
Yeah, 100% you should. I mean, so all of my short films before Amber, and even including Amber, you need to know how much money you have to work with. So all of them before that was completely self-funded by me. So Amber was the first film where somebody else pitched in, even though it wasn't sponsored. It was just friends who were like, let's make this movie and we'll just become producers of it. Everything else before that was just a few thousand dirhams that I'll put together of my own. Again, a lot of favors, but I know what kind of film I can tell within that. So I was like, okay, if I don't have a lot of resources, I don't want to try to write like an action film that takes place on across Dubai, because there's nothing worse than having a cool idea, but you don't have the resources to do it, and you're just making a shitty version of what that is. So I was like, okay, if I can shoot films in one or two locations, couple of days, let me use that as the prompts, and what's the best story that I can tell within those situations. So Skip takes place on an office setting. We can take place in my friend's apartment. For me, that's why locations are a big prompt. So if you can find cool locations, like the office in Skip is a really cool office. We got it for free. But it looks nice. Like nobody would know that a movie is as cheap as it is. But for me, it's very important to know how much money you have and write something within the means of shooting it. And that way you'll have good short films all the time. Because I know so many people who will write a short film and they're like, oh, this will take like 50,000 dirhams to shoot. And then I'm like, yeah, but you'll never get that money unless you are. I know some people who are independently wealthy, and they're I know this guy who was a pilot, and every like 3 months he would shoot like a 50,000 dirham short film.
Introduce us.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa. I'm like, they were not that great, but I'm like, listen, it's his money. He's wasting no one's time. Everybody gets paid on those movies.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, he just does it for fun. So if you don't have that kind of money, which most independent filmmakers unfortunately don't, like, be realistic with what you can do. And I think sometimes having those restrictions makes your films much better because you now have to be more creative and find solutions around things. And I think I think I've found that those restrictions have kind of fueled me to be more creative around those situations than if somebody just told me like, here's a blank check, just think of anything, so I think definitely be financially responsible because it's your own money, and short films don't make money. That's the way. They are a calling card. They're just a way to sort of let people know what you're capable of. Like something like Amber is hugely successful for me because yes, it played in festivals. It got awards and stuff. But the feature films that I'm working on now are in the range of like $1 to $2 million budgets. But the reason why, and even though the scripts that I've written and the producers have loved the scripts, the only reason they're allowing me to direct that script is because they saw Amber is like, okay, he can direct suspense. He understands what suspense is. Yes, it's on a much smaller scale, but they understand that you understand pacing, you understand suspense, you understand visual language of storytelling. So that's what the eventual goal of a short film is. Not to make its money back, but hopefully it's a learning tool, which is amazing. But also hopefully you can tell people, hey, give me some more money and I'll show you what I can do because I can do something with nothing on this level. So treat it as that. So that's why you have to be responsible on your money. Unless you're rich, then go crazy.
Then go crazy with it. Of course, if you're rich, nothing matters.
When it's your money, just go crazy.
Just go crazy with it. But so moving on from that question is like, I would like to think you've achieved a certain level of success, at least when it comes to UAE and the Middle East. How do you stay true to your creative vision and satisfying what the audience craves, or like what you think the audience wants from you, because they expect a certain thing from you, okay? So how do you stay true to your creative vision and satisfying your audience?
Yeah, that's a good question because it is also like a double-edged sword because that question can also almost trip you up. And it has me with a couple of times where I'm like, okay, I made this short film. What should I make next? Because the people will be expecting maybe something different.
Yeah.
But also it's like you have to also be true to yourself, as you mentioned, because yes, you're like the audience is what you're making a film for also, but you are your first audience, So I know many people who have been making films because they're like, oh, this kind of film gets you festival success. So I know people who loved horror films, but suddenly they'll go make like a festival bait drama about a guy dying of cancer and he remembers his tree that he was sitting with because he's like, oh, this will get me in like Dubai Film Festival or whatever, like because it's like social issue based. But it feels hollow when you watch them because you can see that the filmmaker didn't really care. It didn't come from the heart. It just came because it was a calculated move to sort of win an award or get a grant or whatever. So I think it's very important to be true to yourself. I love genre films. Everything that I'm going to make is going to be a genre film, whether it's horror, whether it's thriller, whether it's sci-fi. And so even if I get opportunities to sort of tell, like somebody telling me like, hey, you can make this really completely drama that's completely not like your thing, but hey, I might fund it. If it doesn't come from the heart for me, I won't do that because again, also audiences sort of expect. I think the reason why I've been able to make sort of a niche for myself here is because there are very few people doing the kind of films that I'm doing, on a consistent basis. There are very few people doing genre films. I remember when I used to go to Dubai Film Festival, I used to go to the short films section and everything was drama. I was like, where are the horror films? Where are the genre films? So it's still very hard to find them in this region, Again, as I mentioned, for many reasons, they're harder to make and all of that stuff. But yeah, you have to be true to yourself because, if that's it. I think there was the quote I read that you need to make the film that you would go to the cinema to watch if somebody else would have made it. So that's what I always try to. That's my ethos. Is like something like Amber. If I saw it on YouTube with somebody else, I would dig it.
Yeah.
Like something like Wicked, I would dig it. So I want to make those kind of films that would excite me as an audience member. So yeah, I always try to be true to it. And you know, it's tricky to sort of second guess what the audience would want. But like as long as you stay within the things that you love and create a cool movie, that's what the aim with the feature film is. A feature film is a thriller. You know, again, it's contained, one location, three characters. But yeah, it's still within the ethos of the stuff that you've seen from me.
Make the thing that you care about.
Yeah.
And the rest will fall.
Yeah.
Fall
And
behind,
even with City of Life, you know, even though it is a drama, I've tried to infuse good thriller elements into it, and with but also with heart. Like that's what I love about the first City of Life, is that there is a heart and emotion into it. But I think you can tell a thriller, but as long as the characters have a good reason to do what they're doing, you know, there's an emotional reason to them. So yeah, it's been a great experience of like sort of marrying, as you said, like staying true to myself, but also being a part of something that is not mine. So yeah, I think hopefully it comes out you know, great, as a great mix of sort of my sensibilities and Ali's sensibilities. But yeah.
We'll be looking forward to it. Like that's for sure. We'll be definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Now let's throw some fun things in there in the twist. Are you of the opinion that Marlon Brando is one of the best? Actually, is the best actor that has ever lived. Are you of that opinion?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when you say one of the best actors that ever lived, I would say so. Yeah,
Yeah,
him,
but like
De Niro,
best,
like one of those in that range. I mean, The Godfather is the performance of a lifetime. So
I mean, true.
Yeah, but like, yeah, it's a tricky question of the best actor or one of the best. I would say one of the best.
No,
actors.
no. One of the best, yes, but like the best.
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I can think of better. Like Denzel is one of my favorite.
Thank you.
Denzel is like
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. Oh, Daniel Lewis is great. Yeah. So there's other ones. I would say if you think one of the best,
guaranteed. Of course, everyone is one
but
of the
best is like, you know, you have to now look at everything. And
I think it's very subjective.
100%. Yeah.
It's very subjective.
Yeah. Same. Exactly. Like Denzel, Edward Norton is an amazing actor. Like for me, like versatility is a huge thing, and these guys can play like villains, they can play heroes, they can play like multiple personality characters. So yeah, I would say, yeah, that's a debatable question. We'll have to.
You've seen Gladiator, right?
Yep.
2.
Yeah.
The Gladiator 2 or
no, 1. Yeah, I haven't seen.
But
2
you haven't seen 2?
No, I haven't seen. It's coming out next week.
Are you excited as I am about seeing it? Are you excited?
I am. I'm very excited. I'm very curious to see, because I know it's a direct sequel to the first one.
Yeah.
And Ridley Scott, he's had hits and misses recently.
Yeah,
but when he's in his element, he's incredible. And I think this is being a direct sequel to his film. Like, I hope this is like old Ridley Scott, like the Alien, the Gladiator, the Black Hawk Down, that Ridley Scott like coming back to his. So I'm very curious to see. And again, Denzel is in it.
Thank you.
The presence of Denzel just elevates everything.
I'm telling you, that's. I'll be honest. I mean, I love the Gladiator 1, obviously, but bro, Gladiator 2. The only reason I'm watching is Denzel.
And exactly. When I watched the trailer, I was like, this guy, he's not even like trying to like add an accent to it. I don't care. He's one actor. I'm like, I want him to just be Denzel. That's enough.
Just show up.
Just show up. Denzel in a Roman outfit is all I need in a movie. I'm gonna go in IMAX and I'm gonna watch this.
100%. I think I'm buying my ticket today to go see next
exactly.
week.
Exactly. All I care about.
But before we round up, obviously with all the films you've made, there's always been people that inspired you, you know, along the journey.
Yeah.
I'm guessing maybe Alfred Hitchcock. I'm just throwing that out there. But like, who are the people that actually inspired your whole filmmaking journey?
Yeah. So I would say among filmmakers that I sort of look up to, and in terms of having a career that I would aspire to have, Alfred Hitchcock would be amazing, because again, that's like a different level of director, where he is the first person who made a name for himself of making genre films. But I would say in terms of more modern people, I'm a huge fan of M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan, is just, he is he's a brown person just like me. So that's amazing that he's doing that kind of stuff. B, he was again another filmmaker who made a name for making original genre films. You know, he's not a guy who was like, oh, I'm making like 10 sequels, or I'm like making remakes and stuff like that. Original genre films. And he had a kind of a low period, but he kind of kicked himself back out by going the indie route and like self-financing his own films. So, and now again, if you see his films, it says an M. Night Shyamalan film. Like that is the dream to have, where like your name is on the poster and people are coming. They don't care what the plot is. They don't care who the actor is. I'm going to see the next M. Night Shyamalan film. And I would say on an even newer level, Jordan Peele would be an amazing director, because he's, and if you listen to his interviews, he's a huge fan of M. Night Shyamalan. So he's on the same train of like making interesting genre films, but again, people come to see because it's a Jordan Peele joint. Like that's the new, like I don't care who the actors are. Like I trust the vision of this director. Like for 2 hours, he's going to take me through a journey. So if you can, I have a huge long way to go to get there, but like
Yeah.
if that is the aspiration to get that, where like your name is synonymous, your name is on the poster bigger than the name of some of the actors. Like there are very few directors in the world that can get that. So if you can get there, so those guys are really inspiring me in terms of like original work. You know, in a world of remakes and superhero movies and all that stuff, like they're like, nope. Like Get Out was original, Us, Nope, Trap, old, like original films. I'm just gonna come up and I'm gonna make it and not spend $200 million like a Marvel movie, but I'm gonna entertain an audience and they're all hits. So yeah, that's the idea.
Man, that's actually a very very good list of people you've just named. Like because I haven't seen a lot of Jordan Peele's movies, but the ones that I've seen they scare the heck out of me. Yeah. But before we round up, is there like an advice or just final words you want to aspiring filmmakers out there or just people trying to get into this business? Is there something you want to say to them, like, final words, like, do it?
I mean, so I would say a couple of things. Number one is I would say to any filmmaker, watch films. Watch a lot of films, watch good films, watch bad films. I know so many filmmakers who want to be filmmakers, but they don't watch enough cinema. It's like if you want to be a tennis player, you will watch the greats of tennis, right? You will see what people are doing. So I don't understand why people don't watch. But if you watch films, you will understand what cinematic techniques of what good people are doing. When you watch bad films, you know what not to do, why they don't work. But also you will understand your taste. What do you love? The reason I know I love horror, thriller, and sci-fi and all of those kind of genres is because I watched so many of them that even within them, I know what I like. I know I like a certain kind of horror film that I want to make psychological, something like that versus like maybe something that's more gory or whatever. So understand that, then you'll develop a taste and palette. And the number one asset that you have as a director is your taste. Because you might have 1,000 people on your crew, like cinematographers, amazing people, but they're all serving your taste. They're all there to just for your vision. It all comes top down. So that's the number one thing. Watch a lot of films. And number two is no one is going to care about your film as much as you do. Like, don't expect to wait and someone's going to come. Like, you need to show the passion. You need to reach out to people. You need to put in the hardest working person on set has to be you. Even if you have a lot of resources, like, and I think energy is contagious. So when you're energetic, when you're really passionate about something, it just permeates through the whole crew and everybody's going to bring their 110%. So definitely sort of like push and make, because if you don't care about your film to happen, no one's going to do it. No one's going to do that for you. You have to, all the films that I've made is because I initiated them and I was like, I need to see this to the finish line. And okay, yes, I had amazing people working along the way, but it all comes from the top. And if you don't make that push, it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Faisal. That's definitely something to end with. Thank you for coming. I'm really, really glad that we had this conversation, man.
Thank you, man.
And I'd like to continue this conversation off camera at some point.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for coming. Yeah. And there you have it, folks. That was Faisal. That was such a fascinating session we just had. Make sure to follow us on all our social media. On YouTube, we're dropping episodes every other week. Until next time, peace out.